Okay, I think we'll get going now. So we've got plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And obviously anyone who joins, we're going to be recording the webinar, so you will be able to watch it back as well. So welcome to the webinar from Powering Up, which is a community business renewal capacity strengthening programme. I'm Susie Finlayson from Power to Change. I'm joined by my colleagues Dorothy and Carol, who will introduce themselves in a bit more detail in a minute. So welcome all to the webinar. We are going to go through today kind of who are Power to Change, what we are, what we do, and what community businesses are, what Powering Up is as a programme. We're going to talk through kind of which organisations can apply and how to go about applying and find out if you're eligible and fill in the application form. And then we'll hand over to you for questions and answers at the end. And do put them into the Q&A chat box. So you should be able to see a Q&A box so you can put in any questions as we go, and then we'll come back to them at the end. So don't worry about storing them all and then coming back to them at the end, just pop them in as we go, and we'll be able to bring them up towards the end of the webinar. So kicking off, about Power to Change, some of you might be quite kind of familiar with us, may have had support from us previously, but others of you might be really new to us. So we are an independent charitable trust. We were set up in 2015 to support community businesses in England. So what we call community businesses, and again, we'll go through this in a bit more detail a bit later on, they're locally rooted, so they're place-based, they're led by and accountable to their local community. They trade in some way, and they really contribute to better lives for their local community and the people in those local communities. So we support community businesses in a variety of ways. We do grant funding, we do capacity strengthening support, which obviously this programme falls under. We do research and policy work and market development, so really creating the conditions for community businesses to kind of thrive and create better places for those places they're located in. So today, for me, so I'm a development manager at Power to Change. I tend to lead on our health and care work, and in our kind of COVID-19 renewal phase, I've been working with colleagues on the Powering Up programme and how we can support community businesses to adapt and work their way through COVID-19. And I'm joined by my colleagues Dorothy and Carol. So Dorothy, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction, and then we'll hand over to Carol.
Hello, I'm Dorothy Francis, and I'm one of the link workers for Power to Change for this programme, and I'm pleased to be here today to talk to you all. I've worked for more than 35 years within community business development, working primarily with cooperatives, social enterprises, community businesses, credit unions, and other businesses that are owned and controlled by their membership and local community. And I have a passion for working with communities to help them to help themselves. And that's why I'm delighted to be a link worker on this programme and look forward to working with you.
Hi, I'm Carol Donnelly. I'm also one of the link workers on the Power to Change Powering Up programme. A bit like Dorothy, over 30 years experience of working in local communities. I'm based in the West Midlands. I've had a 25-year career in social housing, and recently set up my own consultancy working with communities, but I've also had my own social enterprises and been part of Power to Change Trade Up programme with the School for Social Entrepreneurs. So I bring a lot of wealth into this programme as well. So it's also really looking forward to working with you to see if we can get you through the Powering Up programme.
Great, thank you both, and you'll hear more from Dorothy and Carol very soon. So I will hand over to them to talk you through the Powering Up programme, what it is, who can apply, and as I say, just pop any questions you have that come up as we go into the Q&A box, and we'll come back to those at the end. So Dorothy, I think you're starting us off, or Carol, I can't remember. Over to you both.
Right. Could I have the slide, please? Right, so Powering Up is a programme designed to support you and to build capacity for your organisations. You can see the link on the screen for applying, and we'll talk to you more about that later on. If we can go on to the next slide. So what exactly is it? It's part of a wider programme within Power to Change, which is designed to support community businesses to be as strong as they can be. And And the main aim of Powering Up is to support organisations that have been directly hit by COVID-19. And really, we know that that means an awful lot of businesses, most businesses really. It's not a grant programme, so you don't need to worry about how the money goes through your accounts or how you represent it. It's there as a programme of support for you. And as I said, it's for those communities hardest hit. Your community centre has had to close its doors and you've lost the income that you normally get from running the cafe or renting out the hall to other groups. Your city farm has had to shut and the garden centre has lost all its profits as the plants have withered away. Your services for people with learning disabilities has had to be suspended, and you've not been able to pull down the money from that contract. There can be any number of ways, so many ways that organisations have been hurt and hit by COVID-19. And what we're trying to do here is to help you to get back on your feet. This is about, it can also be about change. So you may feel that because of COVID-19, you need to make some changes to the way that you're run. So you need a new governance model, perhaps. We've already spoken to one organisation who's seeking to become a charity because of support needs that they've identified because of COVID-19. And they realise that their current governance model is not sufficient to take them forward. So we can help you to look at your legal structure, at your governance. We can help you to look at new ways of trading, new markets. Some organisations have actually found new markets as a result of COVID-19, ones which they are able to exploit and which they perhaps would not have discovered otherwise. And so that is an opportunity as well that we're willing to help you to explore. It could be that you feel that you need to become more digitally adventurous in what you do. Today I'm talking to you via Zoom, which I have to admit, even though I now know it's been around since 2011, I'd never heard of Zoom before last January. I'd never done a seminar like this, but now we do these on an almost everyday basis. This is how we communicate with each other. And so we've all had to become rapidly more digitally aware. But for some organisations, they're still a little bit behind, or they're looking for new ways of using digital to take their services forward. So I have recently spoken to an organisation that realises that it's lost out during the COVID-19 period because they have not had a digital booking system. They were used to taking bookings manually, now they need to be taken digitally. And so we're working with them to develop that aspect of their work. So you can see that there is a lot that we can do with you under this programme. There is, the offer goes up to £3,000 worth of support, and the support comes from varied and multiple partners, all of whom are excellent at what they do. And it can provide up to 6 days of work, depending on which partners you're working with. And I believe you will find that it is a very worthwhile programme to be involved in. So hopefully that gives you a clear idea of what Powering Up is, but there is a question and answer session at the end, and if I haven't expanded it or explained it correctly or in depth, then I'll be happy to come back to this later.
Next slide, please. So what is the Delivering Up Powering Up programme? Dorothy's just said we've been working with a range of partners and we've recruited a number of organisations. And you can see on the slide there, Umbrella Initiative based in London, now working across the country, doing some amazing work out there in the community. Cooperatives UK, so if you're a mutual, a cooperative or looking at community share offers, Cooperatives UK are an excellent partner there. The Plunkett Foundation, they're a group, an organisation that tend to work more in a rural setting, working with a lot of the community shops, the community pubs, but also, you know, really looking about how they develop, and they've brought some experts into the programme with us. Locality, so you know, again, working nationally, I've worked quite a lot with localities, especially in the West Midlands, and how they develop. They're really good with the community centres, the community businesses based really locally. So they're working with us. And also, I've not left them to last, the School for Social Entrepreneurs, as a double fellow of the School for Social Entrepreneurs. We're really passionate about how we develop those community interest companies, those social enterprises that have their base rooted within the local community. And also Eastside Primetimers, they're a consortium of coaches, of experts, range from anything from financial right the way up to business development and looking about how you change your governance structures. What we're also working with is an organisation called Bird Movements, and they're looking at the health and well-being aspect, and they've put a really good offer together. So if you're looking to, you know, you've been impacted because of COVID within your community business, and you're experiencing stress, or you're experiencing, you know, some real difficulties within your business, then Bird will work with you. And also Dorothy mentioned the digital one. We're working with the Design Council and another organisation to really drive what it's like to look at your digital offer at the moment. So we've been setting that up over the last few weeks. We were recruited at the end of October, so we've been really busy, and we've been piloting and working through some diagnostics with the 22 that were approved in round one, and that's going really well, and it's getting a really good understanding of what the program, the Powering Up program, can offer. So what we're doing is trying to really apply what the community businesses needed within that pilot, and we will be making some changes throughout, because we know sometimes that it is difficult to really define what it is that you're looking for, and then we've got to match that to the right consultant for you, and it's about, you know, how we do that. So we'll come and talk to you, as Dorothy said, we'll do that on Zoom or on the telephone, or however you want to do it. It's a shame we can't get out and visit, but we're all in lockdown still, and we are responding very, very quickly. So it will be bespoke, and it'll be tailored support. As Dorothy said, I've been talking to some organisations and really drilled down to what it is that they needed to really help them in the next few months, and that's the interesting bit that us as link workers have been able to do. So we'll be continually reviewing this, and we've got a meeting afterwards to look at how we develop those business plans for you and get the right people working with you. So next slide, please. So what kind of support can you access if you're accepted onto this program? Well, that ranges from lots of areas. One of the key ones we've noticed is that people were really looking at how do they, you know, cope with their human resources. So they're looking at their policies and procedures. They're looking at how they develop those, you know, going forward. How do you then reopen your community centres to make sure that you're ready, and your staff are ready, and your volunteers are ready to move forward? So HR support is there, financial and business planning in these uncertain times. This has been the one that most people say is crucial at the moment. They're looking to pivot their businesses, they're looking to drive it forward, and the finances, where are we going to get the money from? It's all right at the moment, there's some grant funding available, but how do I rebuild up my trading part? So again, they'll be looking at that, and some really good experts who have, you know, developed some really good business planning in uncertain times. Health and safety when you're opening up your premises, or you've had to pivot your business and you're now going out to people's homes. So you're looking at lone workers. You're looking at, you know, making sure that you're COVID secure when you're opening up those places. And it does change on a regular basis. So we've got some really good health and safety experts. Digital transformation we've talked about quite a bit. And as I said, we'll be working with the Design Council and the DOT project to really look at what your digital offer is. But remember, this is only up to 6 days worth of support, so it won't do it for you. You've got to work in a partnership and be ready to work with these consultants. Crisis and change management, I think after running my own business, I know how crucial it is that we don't just, you know, look at the crisis, but we look at the change and how we move forward so we can grow our community businesses. And if necessary, you know, you want to look at your governance, you want to be looking at how you grow your business, or in some cases, how do I close it successfully? Because that may well be a choice and reopen something else. So again, crisis and change management. Equality, looking at that, your equity, your diversity. Are you inclusive? Are you driving that forward? Are you really representing your community? And we know with COVID-19, it really did hit the BAME community quite hard. And it's about how we grow that and how we develop that. Hence why we're working with Donnelly, based in London. We've also got some amazing coaches. So you'll have one-to-one or one-to-group coaching for your community business leaders. And again, that is about how we grow and develop you as a person so you can give the best to your business. Peer mentoring is one of my favorites. I love learning from other people that have done it. There's no point reinventing the wheel. So we look to match you with a really good peer mentor who you can work with, who you can really have a conversation with, who knows and understands what it's like to be in your position. So peer mentoring is on option as well. I talked a little bit about the mental health and wellbeing support from Bird. And again, that's a very comprehensive one. That can be one-to-one, or it can be up to 20 members of your team on a webinar basis, 1, 2 or 3 hours. Mental health and wellbeing we just talked about, and then a funding masterclass. Where do you go to get the grant funding? I know with community businesses, having run it myself, trading, yes, because that's why we're Power to Change, but also how do we get some really good bid writers, grant funding, how do we do that, and how do we grow? So next slide, please. I think that's over to Dorothy.
Right. So how does it work? How do you get onto the programme? Well, the first thing that we want to say is that we have tried to make it as easy as possible for you to access this support. The application form is online and it's a fairly simple form with not too many questions. However, we're very much aware that some people may have difficulty in answering the questions or completing the application form. And so we do actually offer a service whereby a link worker will ring you and talk to you and work through the application form with you if that's what you require. Essentially, this program is here to support you, and we don't want to put barriers in at any point, and certainly not right at the beginning, and deter you from applying because you don't understand the form or you want to ask questions. So if there are questions that you need to ask, then please do ring and we will be happy to answer them, or indeed happy to work through the application form with you. So once you've applied for the project and the closing date has passed, and hopefully you've been accepted for the Powering Up programme, you will then have a call with a link worker, and I'll introduce the link workers a bit later. You've met me and Carol, but there are 2 other link workers. You'll have a call with a link worker to set up a meeting for a diagnostic review. Now, diagnostic is a really big word for what is essentially an extended conversation with a lot of questions. The diagnostic review covers finances, your governance, your market, competitors, a lot of different areas. And what we're seeking to do in doing the diagnostic is to ascertain your needs, look at your strengths, look at the weaknesses that you identify, and then look at how we can address those weaknesses, magnify your strengths, and help you to move forward. We'll agree a support plan as a result of the diagnostic. The diagnostic meeting takes 2 hours or so. I say also in that I've only thus far managed to get 1 into 2 hours. Most of mine have been a little bit longer than that, so either it's me or I think it might be me, I need to work on it, but we normally say allow 2 hours at least for it. And that might seem quite a commitment. However, the comments that we're getting back from groups thus far is that they find the diagnostic review to be of value in itself, in that it gives them a thorough review of their enterprise. And thus far we've had groups say to us, for instance, that the whole process was worth it, even if it doesn't go beyond diagnostic, or that they'd be happy to answer all the questions again, just because they found it so very useful to sit and consider the answer to those questions, that they found it really, really useful. Or it's so good to have someone to talk to. So we're finding that the diagnostic review in itself is seen by community businesses to be a vital and interesting part of this process. So once you've had the diagnostic meeting with your link worker, you and the link worker will jointly agree a support plan. The link worker will connect you to the support providers that Carol talked about. We have lots in the programme, more so than were actually on the slide that was displayed just a few minutes ago. So we have tried to cover all aspects of business development, and we hope that we have done so. So your link worker will link you to the support that best help you, and you will then meet with those support providers to access the support, advice, training, whatever it is that you need. And this can take anything from weeks to months. We would like it to be sooner rather than later, in that this is a COVID response programme. We want it to move quickly, and also because the programme is time limited. But it will be up to you to decide this with the support providers. Once you have completed that programme of support, you will come back to your link worker to review the whole process, to give us feedback, because as Carol says, this is a new programme, we've not run it before, and if we are to run it again or continue running it, then we want to make sure it's as good as possible for everybody in it. So we'll be seeking feedback from you, both negative and positive, to allow us, to assist us to do better. We want to know how you've got on, so the review will say, how has the programme helped you to develop, to move your community business forward? And also we'll be saying, how did we do? So there's a lot in it, but we have made sure that it runs as smoothly as possible. If I may have the next slide, please. So here are the link workers. So as you can see, we're a very happy, smiley bunch, and it's a great team to work in, and you will get an excellent service no matter who you are matched with. One of the things which we like to identify is that we do know what it's like to run a business. We are not going to be talking to you from the viewpoint of having once read a business plan in a book or done a university module. All of us run our own enterprises. I have been the director of a cooperatively run business for the past 35 years, and therefore have been subject to the ups and downs and tribulations, and also the joys of running your own enterprise and being self-employed. Carol spoke about the fact that she runs her own community business, and Sarah and Harsha also run their own enterprises. So we do understand what it is to run a business and to have to cope through COVID-19 situations, because we ourselves are doing it. And I think that's important, because we want you to know that we do empathise with you, and that we are going to work with you to make this as good a process as possible. So here is your team: me, Dorothy Francis, Carol, Sarah Buchanan and Harsha Patel, who are all here and looking forward to meeting with you. So that's my bit for here. So for the next slide, please.
And how you can apply. So can I have the next slide, please? So what do you need to do to meet this criteria? I know a lot of people always say it's so difficult to get into power to change. How do I do it if I'm a social enterprise? So what you need to do is that you need to be operating within England at a neighbourhood level. So that's at a very local level. So if you're operating, say, across the whole of the West Midlands, then you're not operating locally. It is about being a real local organisation. You have to meet the 4 key features of what a community business is, and we'll go through that in a little while as well, because that is very crucial. If you don't meet those 4 criteria, then you won't get through the first round of this. And what you have to do is to explain how the capacity strengthening support is going to really help your organisation. don't expect us to know what your organisation is doing in the local community. You need to tell us, and you have that ability to do that within the form. You have to be an incorporated organisation, and that means, you know, you must have been trading for at least a year, so you've got some accounts. So you have to be incorporated. That can be anything from a community interest company to a charity to a ComBem to a company limited by guarantee, as long as you can demonstrate the community are actually part of that. So be incorporated. You have to have a charitable purpose. So, you know, it's not just for the board members and the directors that are getting the benefits from this organisation. It has to be a charitable purpose that is linked into the community. And that links again with the operating for public benefit. You have to make use of this before the end of June 2021. Otherwise, the funding disappears and you'll lose your support. So only apply if you've got the capacity to do this as well. So I think we're talking between 4 to 6 days of support for you, plus 1 to 2 days of actually going through the diagnostics and getting the business development plan with you. So make sure you've got that capacity within your team, and your board and your team are supporting you. And we will prioritise applications from those communities that have been hardest hit by COVID-19. And we talk about IMDs, and that gets put onto the application form. We don't make that standard. It's put onto your application form. So if you are a BAME-led community organisation, and we know we are changing that terminology soon because it's probably a little bit outdated and we need to be more inclusive, but if you are working with BAME communities, you are working with disabled communities, or they're part of your board, please make sure you tell us about it, because we don't know unless you tell us. So next slide, please. I think this is back to Dorothy for the next one.
Right, well, I won't be speaking much to this because Carol has covered some of it, and also it'd be great to leave time for your questions, because I'm sure that as we speak, you're not noting down questions as we go along, so we look forward to answering those. So it's very important that it's appreciated that this programme, like all Power to Change programmes, is entirely for community businesses. And it is important that people recognise what a community business is. Carol made reference to people saying that it sometimes seems very difficult to get into Power to Change in terms of funding. Actually, it's quite easy, because Power to Change works its hardest to make sure that everybody can apply and that artificial barriers are not put in the way. So it is easy to get into Power to Change for consideration for grant or other funding if you follow the guidelines. And so that's why we're really emphasizing this, because it saves you putting in an application only to find that you've fallen at the first hurdle, because the first point is your business structure. It's whether or not you actually are a community business. So what is a community business? As Carol has already said, it needs to be locally rooted. And for Power to Change, this can mean very, very local. It does not necessarily mean the entire city of Leicester, for instance, or even one area within Leicester. It could mean just one ward, a very small area, but it needs to be local. So it needs to meet that criteria of being locally based, run by local people, for local people, and accountable to the local community. So Carol and I could get together to set up a wonderful business which addresses community needs, and we do great work, but we don't allow anybody from the community onto the board or allow them to take part in groups or discussions or feedback as to how we do. And so it's not accountable. Yes, we're doing great work, but it's not accountable. And unfortunately, a lot of social enterprises and cooperatives fall by the wayside here, in that they do great work, they meet lots of targets, but their board is just comprised of the people who work in that enterprise, and they do not necessarily have accountability or representation from local people. And so they are often surprised when they are rejected, because they say, well, we do great work, why have you not let us through? And the answer is that you are not able to demonstrate that you're accountable to the local community. So this is a very important element, and one which needs to be considered. You should ideally be trading, because we are looking at business here. And so you need to demonstrate that you are trading, and also that you trade for the benefit of the local community. So again, to use Carol and myself as an example, we could be meeting the other criterias, but we're trading to, our business does great work in the community, but essentially the profits and everything else at the end of the day go back into mine and Carol's pockets. That's not trading for the local community, that's trading for me and Carol. And also, if we're not taking the local community into account, we're not properly a community business. And so that aspect needs to be addressed as well. And lastly, we need to demonstrate that we're making a broad community impact, that what we are doing has a defined impact on the community, makes an impression. It is something which the community needs, and also, vitally, something that the community agrees that it needs. It's not good enough for me and Carol to come in and say, we've read this about you and this is what we think you need. It doesn't work that way. The community needs to be vitally involved in it. So that is what a community business is: locally rooted, accountable to the community that they serve, trading for the benefit of that local community, and making a broad impact on that community. So, next slide, please.
Right, so you want to know when you can apply. This is round 2. As I said, we had a pilot round in that was open November. This one opens today, so it's already open at 10 o'clock. We've had some inquiries so far. I don't think we've had any applications yet. Well, we didn't when we checked about 12 o'clock. And it closes on the 1st of February at 4 p.m. Now, all applications will be assessed at the end of the round. We don't assess them during the application period, and we get back to you within 7 working days of that window closing. So it's a very tight turnaround program, and that 7 days will tell you whether you're coming onto the program or not, and what you can do if you're not coming onto it, and what you would expect if you are coming onto it. As you said, you can apply via powertochange.org.uk, and we will have some further rounds as well. So we're taking 20 organisations through on each cohort round. So approximately 120 in total will go through the Powering Up programme. So if you need any help applying, as both Dorothy and I had said, then you can email the link worker at powertochange.org.uk, put your contact details in there, your organisation and a phone number, and one of the 4 of us will call you to go through your application. We'll either help you fill it in online, or we'll give you some hints and guidance, and also go through that locally rooted of how you can apply. So next slide, please. So the application process, you will be asked to identify whether you've had any previous funding from Power to Change, and that's a lovely drop-down menu, and it talks about whether you've had Bright Ideas, whether you've had the Resilience funding, whether you've been on the Trade Up programme with the School for Social Entrepreneurs. So it's a drop-down one, or other, and you'll be able to type in. And if you can't remember, see if you can identify it, but if you can't, well, find out afterwards. You'll be asked to enter your contact details of what the organisation is, so that needs to be the key person that we can talk to, and also you'll need your legal structure there and your charitable purpose. So make sure that you've got your charity number and your company number. That helps us then to identify you, and also helps us while we're doing the assessment process to have a look at your accounts and have a look that you're a trading organisation. So you'll be asked to do that, and then it will talk about the leadership and the staffing of your community business, and that needs to reflect the makeup of your community. This is where you get the opportunity to tell us what you do. Remember, we don't know what you do, so make sure you tell us. There's a free box there that you can type into, and it's also spell check, so don't worry about the spell check. You can right click on that. So next slide, please. So this is Section 3 tells you about the organisation and how you meet those 4 business criteria. This is crucial that you put that information in. I know from the pilot one, people didn't really put that information in. They didn't tell us enough information. So you might not have got through at that round if you didn't show how you were locally rooted into the community. And it is about you telling us that story. And tell us about how you're trading. You know, if you're fully grant reliant, that is not a trading community business. So, you know, you've got to say, we provide XY services to the local authority, or we have a cafe that used to do this, this and this and trading, and this is how it's been impacted by COVID, because we can't open it, we're not making our cakes, we're not making our bread and distributing to the community. Again, you've got that section here to tell you how you involve your local community in the decision making about what your organisation does. And have you got local board members? Are they local within the area? Are your staff, how many volunteers have you got that come from that local area? That's a good way of demonstrating how accountable you are if you've got local volunteers coming and working with you. And also talk about your broad community impact. So what is the real impact? What's the social impact and the community impact that your services or what you provide has on that local one? So again, tell us what's going on, because if you don't tell us, we won't know and you won't get through. So next slide, please. Section 4 and 5. Now this actually works out. You remember I talked a little bit about what services were available: HR, health and safety, business planning, finances. Now this gives you a drop-down box to say, I want some support with health and well-being, I want some support with business planning, and you actually put a figure there. So is it high priority? That would be a 4 or 5. If it's something I don't need to look at yet, but I know it's coming down the line, that might be a 2 or 3. And again, describe what the impact is and why COVID-19 has had that impact on yours. So again, we can use the example of finance. COVID-19, I haven't been able to open the doors of the community business. All our bookings have collapsed. Although we've managed to put some of it online, we haven't been able to do all of it. So again, give us the information, and it doesn't matter how much you type in there. The more information you give us, the easier it is for us link workers to actually work with you and find out exactly what that need is. And section 6, again, this is really important. Do you have the capacity and the availability to engage with the coaches, the business coaches, and the diagnostic with the link workers to go through this? And remember, it has to be completed by June 2021. So we've got a very short window of time. And when I'm looking at business planning with my own community business head on, it's something that I need to dedicate some time. And then it's also not just the time to work with the coaches and the businesses, but also time to implement it. So make sure you have that capacity to do that, and you've got the board or you've got the key people on board to work with it. So that's the application process. So over to Susie, I think is the next slide.
Yes, back to me. I'll just put my video back on. Yes, so there's other support available from Power to Change at the minute. Some of you may or may not have seen our emergency funding that we put out earlier in the year. But at the minute, so the Community Business Renewal Fund, so round 2 of that is closing tomorrow. So if you want to look at that and haven't yet, then that might be a priority for the rest of the day. And that is a grant that goes towards core costs for community businesses, giving them the capacity to kind of respond, adapt and evolve in relation to COVID-19 in order to remain viable. So yeah, there's a further round opening in March, so there's not a full pressure unless you feel like you really want to jump at that in the next 24 hours or so. There's a couple of other programs that are about match funding. So the Community Shares Reboost. So this is £25,000 of match funding that can come if you deliver your first community share offer. So that's crucial, isn't it? It's the first community share offer that you do as an organisation. If you launch a share offer, then you can apply to have up to £25,000 matched in terms of grant for that. There's Crowd Match, which is a similar style of program, but for crowdfunder instead of community share offers. So you could launch a crowdfunder and apply, and we could offer up to £10,000 in grant to match any kind of investment that you raise from your local community through crowdfunding. And then there's a peer support and kind of solidarity organized kind of collection of organisations that are coming together under the Community Business Mutual Aid banner. So they meet regularly online, share experiences, learn from each other, and really are a kind of supportive peer support group. And that's at cbmutualaid.co.uk. So you can go to the website and find out a bit more. All of this is up on our website, so don't worry about scribbling it all down now. You can go and look at our website to find out what support is available. But we have come to the end of us talking at you. So thank you, Dorothy and Carol. And I think we've got kind of over 15 minutes for questions. So hopefully that's helped to clear up a bit of information if you were wanting to find out more about the programme, but I'm sure it's also raised a lot of questions for people. So over to you. Summer, I think you've been monitoring the chat box and the Q&A. So if you want to start taking us through the questions, then hopefully between Carol and Dorothy and I, we can get some answers.
I've just been kind of answering ones that I knew the answer to. There is a question in the Q&A box. I'm not quite sure what the question is. So David says, charitable purpose and for public benefit is tighter than community business, i.e. the community why? David, I'm not sure if you want to kind of clarify that a little bit more.
I think, yeah, David, I don't think you'll be able to speak, but if you could pop into the chat box a bit more.
I've just given him a chance to talk. If he does want to talk, that's fine. No worries.
There we go.
Okay, I was really just trying to work out why there is a need for charitable purpose and public benefit when we're talking about businesses that are primarily supposed to trade, albeit for the community. It seems to be at odds. It's your definition issue, I think, which you did kind of answer to an extent.
I'm happy to take this.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of our funding and support goes to organisations that have charitable purpose. So we ourselves, that's what our funding is, and our endowment that we were given by lottery. It's all got to go towards organisations that have a charitable purpose and act in public benefit. So it's got to be more than incidental private benefit. So I think how Dorothy described it earlier of if an organisation was trading and it was just Dorothy and Carol in that example who were benefiting kind of financially from any profit or surplus that's generated from that, that wouldn't fit, and that would be private benefit. But the public benefit bit is that there's, you know, for certain organisations you might have an asset lock in place, for instance, if they were acquiring kind of physical premises and stuff like that. So it's really about public benefit and having charitable purpose. So we support any legal structure, but it's about being able to show. So I think there's another question just come in from Ershad Akbar about kind of we're a charity, not a CIO. So we can support any kind of legal structure. It's just they have to be able to demonstrate the public benefit and how they're working towards a charitable purpose with that specific piece of work. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a registered charity. I hope that's cleared it up a bit.
Yes, it's your definition. Whether I'll ever agree with it, I don't know, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose in some ways it's more whether people are working towards a community purpose, and that's what needs to be kept in mind. I share what I hopefully understand what you're saying, David, in terms of the word charity, in that it does seem to be at odds with the way that we describe community business as being as trading being a necessity, whereas trading is not usually a necessity for charities. So I suppose what we're saying is that you need to be thinking charitably, but act in community and also acting in a trading way. So there are quite a lot of requirements there, but what we're looking at essentially, I feel, is community ownership, community control, providing a service for the community, trading for the community, having the community involved. And those are the things that need to be demonstrated, really. And also, it can be any structure. I mentioned that cooperatives and social enterprises can fall down, not necessarily just because of their structure, but if you were to take the cooperative that I work for instance, we do not have an asset lock which is recognised by Companies House. We have a voluntary asset lock, but that voluntary asset lock is not enough to allow us entry into the Power to Change programme. We would need an asset lock which comes via a community interest company or a charity. So we could argue we're doing all this great work in the community, have been doing it for almost 40 years. We do not personally benefit. Money goes back into the community, but we would probably fail because of our lack of asset lock. And we'd also fail because the organisation that I work for is owned and managed by its worker directors and does not have an external board, does not have community involvement, even though we do work very hard to develop local communities. So hopefully that is an example of how you could perhaps be doing great work in the community, but find that your community, that your legal structure actually dispars you from being able to apply.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Summer, what else have we had come in?
Answered most of them. That would be famous last words there. Yeah, if anyone wants to ask a question live, that's fine. Just give me a shout and I can let you talk.
Yeah, I think that's a question which I think we'd answered, but a question around whether we could support an organisation to transition from a charity to a CIO, and I think that would be if an organisation applied and that could be identified as a need that had arisen as a result of COVID-19. I think, as Carol described, it needs to be kind of rooted in that impact of COVID-19, and it then came through in the kind of the diagnostic and organisational review. Then I think that's something that absolutely kind of could be supported around the governance structures and the specialist support that can be brought in around that. So it really is about how those needs are linked to the impact of COVID-19 on your community business. So I think I can't see any more questions coming in the chat box. I think you've answered Sue's question there, Summer, as it came in. So I think if there are any other questions, we can stay on the line for another kind of 10 minutes or so if anyone's got any questions, or if you've got other things that you think are a bit more specific, do drop a line to that linkworker@powertochange.org.uk email address and we'll be able to get back in touch with you. But make sure you put in your details there so we know who we're getting in touch with and can reach out to you. But otherwise, thank you all very much, and hopefully see your applications coming in soon.
Thank you.